Welcome back to another episode of Best of 3. First, before we go any further, how's it going with the beard for the future bearded Ryu cosplay?
I've been mistaken many times already.
Are you serious? Yeah, I mean, for a second I thought Ryu had walked into the studio. If you've never watched Best of 3, we break it up into 3 rounds. Round 1 is news. What happened over the weekend? Round 2 is an interview, and today we have a good one with none other than Gerald Lee, the guy that's been putting out those awesome Korean gaming interviews with Infiltration and Punko, which I'm sure you've seen. And round 3 will be analysis. But first, let's say hello, before we get into round 1, to our guest who will be here for round 2, Gerald Lee. Gerald, are you with us? Hey, Gerald.
Hi, thanks for having me.
How's it going, man? Again, Gerald is the guy that's been putting together those awesome interviews with Infiltration that was out recently and with Punko. And he's one of the lucky guys that gets to play at Arcade Stream with those guys as regulars. Anyway, Gerald, we look forward to talking to you here in a little bit, and thank you for joining us.
Well, let's mention our other special guest. Unfortunately, our cohort, Ray Chun, is out today. He's pretty sick. He's had some input into the show, but we're going to have a special guest commentator today.
Mm-hmm. Who we have other than Ian Double John Barker? What's up, Ian?
Hey, guys.
You got a nice haircut, and I said, let's get this guy on the show.
So tell us if you hate it, but we're going to talk a little Smash today.
We're big fans of Smash, and of course, that's why we have Ian on as well. It works out in our favor because Ian is our Smash expert. I don't know if you knew that. But moving on to round 1, there was some Capcom Pro Tour ranking events. Now, if you haven't been following the Capcom Pro Tour, there are ranking events, there's premier events. At premier events, you qualify if you win. At ranking events, you just get a boatload of points. So we had, over the weekend, let's start off in Manila, in the Philippines. We had a Capcom Pro Tour ranking event.
Right. Tone P took that with C Viper. Interesting to note about that tournament was, if you look at top 16, there was 2 Zangiefs and 2 Elenas, but every other character was unique. You had Viper, Sakura, Blanca, Poison as the top 4, which is none of those characters is particularly considered top tier at this point, and just the variety is kind of mind-blowing. I mean, people have talked, there's issues with Ultra, there was all the hitbox problems when the game came out, there's, whether or not Elena's broken or too easy, but the variety has been way more so than that of any of the other versions of Street Fighter 4.
Your thoughts on C Viper? I haven't seen C Viper used at high level in a really long time. It used to be, what's his name?
Latif?
Latif, of course, won Evo with...
There was Latif, there was Uryo from Japan.
I'm blanking on Headcrones, Wolfcrone.
Wolfcrone from Detroit.
Yeah.
She's a character who has been nerfed. She's been slightly buffed actually in Ultra. She gained crouching medium kick, distance as a poke, but I think a lot of people figured out a lot of the things she did. A lot of the burn kick cross-ups don't work as well anymore, but she can definitely be played solidly. And with the feint style and the still strong mix-up, I mean, she still definitely has a place in the metagame, as you see.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I feel like C Viper is a character that is so mix-up heavy and just can really mess with you. You block the wrong way. Why isn't she used more? Isn't that becoming a very viable strategy?
Yes, they've nerfed. She used to have EX ground pound had invincibility, and you could feint it on wake up. And a lot of what she got away with before was just these ridiculous wake up throws and crazy stuff that no other character could get away with. With the nerfs of that, her defensive game is pretty weak. She has her heavy DP, but it's very easy to punish. It's minus on FADC block. There's no EX version to make safe. Her anti-air game requires that, etc. But if you can zone well enough, which is a lot of reads as the recovery on Seismo is ridiculous, you can get a lot of damage.
Mm-hmm. Now, the replay that you're watching behind us, this is from the XSplit, official XSplit. They were streaming this out of Manila, so shout out to them, twitch.tv/XSplit. And is it pronounced Tompi?
Tompi.
Yeah, you know what? He won with C Viper, as we already mentioned, and he got 128 points towards the Capcom Pro Tour. Moving on to First Attack in Puerto Rico, and I was very
Isn't it kind of crazy the way these major tournaments in Manila and in Puerto Rico now? It just sounds
awesome.
So different than 5 years ago. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? I think that's pretty cool.
It's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I know people were traveling out there for vacation. The local players get a chance to get points and play against these amazing players. Sometimes they do very well, sometimes not as much. But it's a long cry from every tournament being final round in Atlanta, something in Philly, something
everything
in,
in
New
the
York.
continent of the United States. Is this a direct result of the Capcom Pro Tour showing so much love and spreading that around?
I think it totally is. I don't know if they're the ones giving. I don't know if they give money towards these events to get them, streamed. But I know that it's gotten people traveling around, and the production values for any tournament on the Capcom Pro Tour are guaranteed to be high enough that people are going to watch them, and thus people locally are going to come, and it just works out in everyone's favor.
I mean, but this tournament itself. I mean, let's just rattle off some of the names. Of course, grand finals was Infiltration versus Snake Eyes. And I'll pull that up while you tell me your thoughts specifically on that grappler matchup.
I mean, it was almost people were like kind of posting a lot of shit talk, for lack of a better word, towards Snake Eyes losing a grappler matchup, like Infiltration's picking Hugo, he's trolling, but in reality, Zangief as a character has a lot of trouble with other grapplers due to the size of their pokes and the size of Zangief. He doesn't have as good of a way through them. He doesn't have the armor that Hugo has. He doesn't have anything to contend with like T-Hawk's standing roundhouse. Mm-hmm. So these have always been problem matchups for Zangief.
You mentioned briefly that Infiltration was trolling using Hugo.
But definitely not, yeah.
But he won.
No, of course he did, yeah. And I mean, it's hard to say, like, was Hugo his best pick there? I mean, who knows? There's probably other characters he could have won with too, but he's already qualified. I don't know how much money there was at this tournament, and I mean, I'm excited to talk to Gerald later about kind of a little more into Infiltration's mindset on like showing up to these tournaments and picking these different characters.
Well, I of course after Infiltration wins with Hugo, I hit up Alex Valle because he's tweeting about it. And I go, was he inspired by you? And Alex Valle's response was he probably saw Storm Kubo versus Itabashi, and my first to 5 versus Daryl. So again, we all know that Infiltration is one of those guys that almost pioneered the whole do my homework, have my notes, study other matches, and clearly he was prepared. So,
I mean, it's very worth knowing because especially if like this guy Snake Eyes might be in the CPT later on. I don't know if he's definitely qualified for sure or anything yet.
Infiltration?
So, Snake Eyes.
Snake Eyes.
So, I mean, learning these different characters and learning the matches beforehand, whereas Snake Eyes is much less likely to choose a different character, he gets to learn a lot more about the players and learn a lot more about the matchups without having to necessarily like sacrifice knowledge of his DiCapri,
How many characters have we seen Infiltration use at a high level in the last three months?
I think we bring it up every show, honestly. So
right.
it's every week it seems to be a different one.
Well, he won, spoiler alert, he won the first attack in Puerto Rico. He got 128 points towards the Capcom Pro Tour. Snake Eyes came in second and got 64 points. He's still a contender. But again, other notable players. When I was at Evo, I interviewed AJ, the fighting game manager from EG, for Street Fighter, and I asked him about K-Brad, and he specifically said K-Brad is a guy that has not won a major since we signed him. Yet. So the question that I'm moving towards here is: do you need to win tournaments to be on one of the most popular teams, or more? I mean, they're like the Yankees, aren't they? Team EG.
We talked about this the other week, but it matters a little less when you're pulling out like shout outs from Stone Cold Steve Austin and getting onto ESPN, I guess. But I mean, that's not to say that he's not a terrific player. He's obviously done very well. I mean, he won. I can't remember which tournament in Philly a couple months back. I mean, he does well. It just, he hasn't been winning majors recently. His character got heavily nerfed going into Ultra, and hopefully he'll be able to continue to do well and then into Street Fighter V. But yeah, it's definitely not how well you do in majors can be a basis of your popularity and what you do for the scene, but that's what gets you the sponsorship, I think. It's not specifically how well you play. That just can be an aid in getting you more popular, whether or not that's the right thing or not.
I guess to answer the question of whether or not, again, is what we're talking, if you have to be good or not, Maximilian just got signed by Mad Cats. And he's super popular. I mean, he got a Canon Award and all kinds of other things. But before we move on from First Attack, shout-outs to some of the Puerto Rican players, including Huracan Asura, who was using T-Hawk. But that might go a little bit further. I'm a big fan. But they put on a good show. You know who got 13th using DiCapri is Ramasama, our buddy from
he's been kind of MIA. I know he got a new job. He's a pharmacist, so he's been real busy. Hard to get time off, so I'm glad he got to go down there.
And last shout out here is R Kappa signed FGC Pugera,
yeah.
And he ended up in third place, and I think he also plays pretty well in Marvel at First Attack.
Possibly. I mean, it's kind of funny because you think of, Marvel's an American game, but you had 2 Japanese in top 8 this year, and every anime player pretty much in Japan tends to play Marvel at least a little bit. I've known this from personal experience playing them. I always money match them in anime and Marvel to make sure I get my money back. And yeah, it's actually a really popular game over there. It's just not an arcade game, so it's not like, top tier in terms of popularity.
All right, next tournament that we're going to talk about is Paragon in LA. Very popular, very well attended.
Is that a Street Fighter tournament?
I'm glad you say that, because the thing that you and I were talking about before the show started was this idea that there's a straight up split between the major Smash tournaments and the fighting game tournaments.
I mean, if you want a good look into that, in NEC's Smash 4 tournament when the game came out, I got third. I think that kind of puts it on display. I wasn't bad at the game. I played it decently seriously when it came out, but I'm certainly not third place at a major level. And because NEC, despite being a fighting game major, isn't a Smash major, and I don't even think there was a Street Fighter tournament at Paragon. So even though we're both kind of under the umbrella of games where you punch each other, the tournaments still don't coincide, and I think that's why you haven't seen anyone really do amazingly well in both games.
Put a pin in that, because I want to talk about it again in a second. Ian, I'm glad you're here, because you just covered in a quick cast earlier today the results from all of the Smash tournaments, all the Smash games that were played.
I did.
At Paragon.
I did.
Go ahead and list those off for us.
So in the Super Smash Brothers Melee bracket, well, actually, we'll start with Project M, sort of, a game that's maybe the least popular of them, but certainly a thriving competitive scene there. Mr. LZ took the gold medal over Oracle and Mewtwo King and Hungry Box in sort of a shock result. Actually, finished fourth. He's really not really known for being good at Project M. He sort of dedicates a token amount of time to it. So for him to finish fourth, especially after beating Professor Pro, who is a British PM player who is extremely talented. It has showed an incredible ability on Snake. Obviously a big win for him.
The winner was like a younger Game & Watch player, I think I heard, or am I wrong in that? Or?
I can't neither confirm nor deny that.
I heard it was a kid.
It was, from what I understand, It was a younger player. Smash 4 bracket, Nairo took home the gold, and it's worth mentioning that TSM 0 was absent from this tournament. He's obviously got a record of something like 42 straight championships. I think he's only lost one since Smash 4 released and since he started competing in it. So him not being there obviously had a big effect on the ecosystem of the players and the people who were able to succeed.
Ian, I've noticed that people in the Smash community get really upset when somebody's out for health issues or something like that, or they're not going to as many tournaments. Talk to me a little bit about that dynamic of people getting upset. It's like, well, PPMD's not going to more tournaments, or Mewtwo King's not going to more tournaments, and I'm upset about that because we're not getting an opportunity to play against them.
Well,
who are they beholden to?
Are you talking about the players or the fans?
I'm talking about other competitors giving their fellow competitors crap for not showing up to these tournaments.
Honestly, I think it's an indictment on...
Am I misrepresenting that?
No, I think you're absolutely getting that right. And I think that it's an indictment on the state of Super Smash Bros. As it is, with Smash 4 picking up steam, with Super Smash Bros. Melee obviously being a game that's been around for quite some time, as an extremely robust competitive scene. At this point, people want to beat the best. People don't care about winning. I mean, obviously winning a major is important, but if you're winning a major because the bracket is devoid of legitimate competitors, there's no victory there. You'll look at the guys who win, and it just does not feel the same as, for example, in EVO, where Armada plowed through an incredible field of competitors, and you saw the emotion from him on the stage. So it's obvious that the Smash 4 tournament in the action was great. It absolutely was, but there has to be a little bit of a sour note to it, because Nairo, didn't get to beat Zero. Nobody even got a crack at Zero. So where would these players be if Zero has been there? And nobody likes those what ifs, especially not when they're claiming medals.
We'll get to the Melee results, but the reason why I bring that up is because you're talking about how I feel like there's a tribe of top-level players, and wherever they go, that's what matters, and all the other Smash tournaments. In fact, I think it was Texas Showdown last year. They had a whole section set up for Smash, and it was crickets in there, man.
Well, that's kind of the outcome of having these open brackets as your entire tournament world. Whereas in the NFL, or any other organized sports league, you have 32 teams, you have 30 teams or whatever, and you have a group of people who everyone knows is good, everyone knows is up there, and if you win that, you win. In a tournament for a fighting game, it's totally reliant on who shows up, whether or not it was legitimate or not. No matter how good the production value is, no matter how much money's up for grabs, if you won and someone wasn't there, it doesn't mean anything. So whether money is what needs to bring people there, whether invitationals need to become the future of fighting games, as they have already for other esports. I know League of Legends and Dota are pretty much run totally on that. The open bracket isn't a big deal anymore. The MLG market's kind of lost some steam as opposed to these tournament-sponsored LCSs or whatever they call them. It's interesting to see whether the fighting games community will go there. And I think there would be a lot of backlash if it did. We care a lot about the open bracket. We care a lot about the beating 20 people, in a row to get there as part of our game. So can we really merge into that is a big question.
Ian, before you get into Melee results, do you have anything to add to that?
I think
Mike?
Yeah, sorry. I was trying to think of Danke, and all I could think of was Blanca, as Blanca put. No, it's pretty obvious that the prestige of tournaments comes from the fact that you've collected the best competitors, and the best competitors are putting their best foot forward every single day. There's no mistaking that. And so the beauty of the open bracket is that a guy, like in the case of Smash 4, a guy like MVD can come up through the ranks and really make magic happen, aside from the fact that he did ultimately fall to Nairo on an incredible stage spike. Absolutely one of the hypest plays of the tournament.
I will pull that up for you.
Please do.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah, please do. But it has to be said that the beauty of the open bracket is the fact that anybody can shine at any given time. At a certain point, though, you have to recognize that if players are flying somewhere with a chance at glory, especially a chance at money, with the low prize pools that are represented in Smash, it's difficult, I think, on a consistent basis to put your reputation on the line, knowing that if some scrub sniper comes up and manages to hit you with something you've never seen before and takes you out of the tournament, not only did you waste the money on a plane ticket to go there, but you go out like a buster, people are going to let you know about it on Twitter, and people are not going to forget that thing easily. But here's that gorgeous stage spike against MVD, so hard to watch, and there it is.
Yeah, it looked like he was trying to cover the main stage again as the platform came back on. Just totally accidentally got spiked by the recovery. Honestly,
it looked, and you as a player, you've got to know that Zero Suit Samus has that. It's a main part of her kit. And so the fact that he's sort of going for the edge guard in such a dangerous situation, that's the sort of thing that has left players even like Mango, who just go for the YOLO moment, obviously putting their hands on their head.
Gentlemen, I remind you that we were going to be talking about the MVD Diddy Kong play in great detail.
Yeah, well, definitely.
Well, excellent.
Okay, so we're going to move on from those tournaments. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
Melee
Melee.
results.
Yeah.
My bad. Yeah. Sorry about that. What do you got for Melee results?
That's all right. Melee, you talked about the best names showing up. The best names absolutely showed up at Melee. And in first place, we had Mango. Second place, Mewtwo King. Hungrybox took third place, and then Westballs sneaking into the fourth place spot, which is not a name I think a lot of people would have expected to see there. But the whole top 8 was an incredible series. Leffen finishing in 5th. Another example of how, maybe since the incident in Europe where he got banned from commentary, maybe there's a little bit of a mental issue going on there where he's sort of struggling with his identity as the bad guy while trying to play his best against other players. The guy who knocked him down there, Hungrybox, needs to be said. Looks like Hungrybox has his number. I mean, 3-2 at Evo. We captured the moments of that incredible pop off where he jumped up and he kissed his wife. Obviously,
and he smacked the TV.
And he smacked the TV. Beat, obviously a rival, somebody who's sort of shoving him out of the pantheon of Smash gods. And this time he did it much more casually. He beat him 3-1, very casually walked off stage, walked on to the next opponent. Westball's taking 4th. Obviously a big deal because Weston has been working really hard to bring in new Falco tech. People thought that maybe Falco was falling behind Fox, and yet he brought out some things, a much more focused performance from him, and he definitely earned what he got there. Hungrybox finishing in 3rd with the reverse sweep to Mewtwo King. Mewtwo King looked on point. He looked just as strong as he did at Super Smash Con. And the incredible thing about Mewtwo King, it has to be said, you don't want to talk about players evolving. Mewtwo King managed to fight back from some very visible frustration against Hungrybox. He even self-destructed a couple times, if I'm not mistaken, against Hungrybox, and he just shook his head. He was just mean-mugged, shaking his head, not happy with his performance. But he beat it, and he went up against the guy who we need to say maybe he's back, is Mango. Mango showed up, looked technically crisp. He went for the YOLO plays, but unlike the Mango from Evo, those YOLO plays weren't misplaced because just like vintage Mango, those YOLO plays were based on hard reads that he turned into incredible punishment. Styling on people a little bit too. There was one point where he put up 3 or 4 hit combo on Mewtwo King and even threw in a little double shine mid combo. which is incredibly technically difficult, and still managed to get the KO. Just and it has to be said, you look at the way that Mango reacted after that tournament, jumping up, pumping his fists a little bit. You have to say that while the kid likes to pretend that he's, sort of unflappable, this immovable object in the world of Super Smash Brothers, you could tell after Evo that he was upset, and this was obviously a big win for him at Paragon in LA.
Yeah, we're definitely about to get into the interview with Gerald. The last thing I'd like to say about Smash, and I think it doesn't get brought up as often, maybe because it's a little taboo, the scene's getting bigger, but I don't really care. Not a Smash player, is kind of the forced evolution of someone as a person due to being in the public eye. Mewtwo King is a guy who was known for a long time for literally pissing on couches and quitting out of tournaments when he was losing and just doing various things. And he's had these hand issues and he's come back. And now as Ian said, he's now at the point where he's losing in tournaments and getting mad and then coming back and winning. He's not quitting out anymore. He's had this Twitter, he's venting his thoughts, but he's doing it in a more constructive way. So it's interesting. Did this happen as a result of him being in the public eye? Did someone tell him to shape up? Did he decide to keep being in the sport that he had to? I don't really know. I just thought it's interesting because it's not really a common thing, but
That being said, that is interesting. But that being said, I saw some really long-winded post about some girl that he tried to get into business with, and I was like, "What am I reading? And why would somebody post all of this online?"
Smash is really drama-filled, really drama-filled to the point where it has this giant community of people who watch the game much more than they play it, which I guess is like sports, really.
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously there's a game, there's a lot of stuff, but the top 8s are very storied. Whereas we talk about a Street Fighter top 8 and we're like, oh, there's a lot of characters, he won, he was a good match, but it's never like he fucking hates him,
Well, it has to be said that those players, it has to be said that those players that you're talking about, they basically are Super Smash Bros. Melee. They're pretty much an embodiment of what the game is and what has become the passion, the accessibility, the commitment, and then also with that sort of rough around the edges, but I think that's sort of what makes it approachable.
No, totally. And you see a little bit of the same thing with Marvel 2, where the top 8 players had become ingrained with the game, which happens after 11 years of playing the same 3 characters in the same matchups over and over and over again, as Smash, Melee, and Marvel 2 both did.
That's probably the most Smash we've ever talked about on this show.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you for chiming in with all that good stuff.
Well, let's bring in our buddy.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. To set it up, you're just watching a Daily Dot production about esports, and we're talking about the competitive scene for fighting games. The world, the esports world is growing. That's no secret. But the surrounding infrastructure and industries around it are growing with it. I would put us as an example of how the production values are going up, and we're taking this very seriously. But another thing that I would point to is the fact that people out in the community are putting out really good, interesting work. This is an interview that was just put up by the Arcade Stream guys. The YouTube channel is Core A Gaming, and it's a great interview. It looks like, we're cutting to infiltration here. Long story short, this is a great interview about infiltration. It's very interesting, and the guy who put this together, who shoots and edits these, is none other than Gerald Lee, our guest. Gerald, are you there, compadre?
Yes, I am. Thanks for having me.
Gerald, I'm going to start off with a simple question to get us into this conversation. What possessed you to do this type of work for Core A Gaming on the YouTube channel to put out these interviews?
Well, long story short, I came to Korea about 4 years ago, and I was just a freelance filmmaker, and I just started making some money, met some other guys who were into filmmaking. We decided to run a business together, and so we kind of have a video production company here in Korea. We're only 3 guys. It's me, a guy named Bill, and a guy named Guy, and we decided we need to make our own content because, we were getting enough client work. So, I'm a Street Fighter fan. I've always been. And I knew some of the players. I knew people like Laugh and Infiltration. And, I thought this might be a good idea to do some video content. And then when I met Drake Fang, the guy who runs Arcade Stream, who slaves away and works really hard to keep it alive, he approached me about doing kind of a partnering up and doing a thing where we promote each other and where I can run a channel and he'll run Arcade Stream, which will bring in the players and since then it's been kind of an experiment, but it seems like the demand is there and people are are interested in what's going on here, because it feels so secretive, without any kind of content or media on it. So
now,
that's about the gist of it.
Now you're currently making content in Korea. Are you from Korea, or where did you get your starts in all of this?
So I was born in the States. I'm actually from Texas.
Attaboy.
We're except I'm from Arlington, Texas, so North Texas.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I my parents are from Korea, and I lived in Korea for like a year to learn Korean, and I got to I'd say I'm pretty fluent at this point, and I came back to Korea just to visit, and that's when I started finding some job opportunities, and it's now it's become a business, but it's kind of everything's aligned. I'm a Street Fighter guy, I'm a media guy, and I also speak Korean and English, so why not use that to see what Infiltration thinks about our Mika, right?
Awesome.
Exactly. I mean, and you answered one of the burning questions that everybody had. How does Infiltration feel about our Mika? And I think that's the highlight of that interview. Could you tell us what his answer was to that question?
Well, I mean, what's really funny about that was, I gave him the questions beforehand, and he thought about them, and then as he was answering them, I expected Infiltration to say, something like, "Oh, our Mika is like mix-up opportunities or endless, and her play style looks to add something new to the genre." But he's just like, who doesn't like big butts and boobs? And
yeah, that was his answer.
Is that just the kind of guy he is, or I mean, like, yeah.
Infiltration's somebody who's, especially now, he's always trying to have fun. And I don't know if you guys have seen his stream, but his stream is just like super trollish, and I think he's kind of a good representation of the Korean Street Fighter scene in general, as opposed to other scenes. If you go to a Street Fighter tournament in Korea, everybody's trolling each other. I mean, it's when somebody wins, they do a pose from they do the Makoto pose or whoever they're playing, and they like to troll each other a lot. And there's a lot of screaming, laughing, and so I think Infiltration is kind of bringing that onto like a bigger stage. Of course, he's a world-class player, and he can kind of show some of that.
Gerald, before we start talking about more about the arcade scene and the FGC culture in Korea, you're touching on something that I find to be most interesting out of this whole thing, is this idea that you're exporting your culture. That exists in Korea. You have access to it. People want to see it. And were it not for you, we otherwise would not have seen it. And that's what I think is so cool about what you're doing. It's also near and dear to my heart because, I used to work in traditional news, and on the weekends I would go to tournaments and try to get interviews. And the response more than anything was, "Thank you so much for sharing this with us. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known about so-and-so."
Yeah.
What do you think you're satisfying right now in the world of FGC content media that you feel your content addresses or serves?
Well, I've always been a fan of Street Fighter, and I remember distinctly watching Evo. I believe it was 2010, and that was when nobody really knew Infiltration at that time, but he made third, just behind Daigo and Ricky Ortiz at Evo, and I was like, wow, this is a Korean guy who almost won Evo. That's ridiculous. I never thought Korea and Street Fighter were matched together, but I mean, there's a guy, and he after following the scene for a while, of course, everyone knows Infiltration won Evo, Laugh got a title with Infiltration and Street Fighter Cross Tekken. I think 2012 was the year of Korea. I think Mad KOF got a title for King of the Fighters, and Punko, of course, 2011. Everyone knows the Red Bull stunt that he did.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some interviews, there's some content out that was coming out, but it was a little bit, it was kind of hastily, kind of when he's walking out, kind of grab him, kind of stuff, and I enjoy that kind of stuff. But being in Korea, I realized I have access to these players, and I was able to make interviews that I would have wanted to watch during that time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the content basically is what I would want to watch, based on the Korean Street Fighter scene.
Yeah, it's very interesting because like Infiltration came on. I remember he was a guy in a beanie playing Akuma. He evolved into like this robotic Akuma player, like of death, you know. And we didn't hear him talk that much. And then when we did hear him talk, we started seeing him stream. We started hearing him talk. We heard like the goofy English. We heard everything like that, and that became his personality. But then with this interview, which I honestly just saw recently, we've now get to see him respond in Korean. We have the translation now. We have the production values now. We get to see what they would say and what we can we wouldn't get to hear out of them without those subtitles. And so it's kind of incredible how him just playing the game has turned into us being able to get his opinion via these productions that can go on. I mean, it's like, does every country need something like this so that like everyone can understand each other? And who knows, when is Japan going to get to understand Korea without knowing English? Like, where is the market for that? So, I mean...
So, Gerald, when we were here for South by Southwest, the Daily Dot did a couple of interviews with a lot of the players that were here for a local exhibition tournament that was held during South by Southwest here in Austin. And among them was none other than Momochi. And we were lucky enough to have Ryan Fubar Duck Harvey there to translate for us. But doing those translations live as opposed to subtitling it is really apples and oranges because... Ryan did a fantastic job translating, but you hear how much they say to each other and then what the answer is, and it just doesn't feel like it measures up. There's the delayed reaction. It doesn't really have the same oomph. So that's why I like that you're leaving them, putting them in subtitles, even though I've heard Infiltration speak in English.
Go ahead.
That's
I think that's important too. I mean, you got to have the next best thing, especially if it's live. You can't put subtitles on somebody while they're, live. So, I do find that important. And so this is kind of an extension to getting these, foreigner players to speak their mind.
Now, Gerald, you mentioned the fact that it's a trolley environment. The Korean gamers tend to be a little more, how would you describe it? I'll just let you take it from there. Explain to us the difference between the traditional Korean FGC player versus the rest of the world or other places that you've been to.
Yeah, I remember when Shen came down for a tournament at our arcade stream. He was really surprised because everybody was just it looked like nobody was taking it seriously. And I don't know what it's like in Taito Station, but from my friends who've been there, it's the competition's very very fierce and intense, and you can feel it. Whereas in the Korean scene, I think a lot of the people know each other because it is a smaller scene. And everyone, it just seems like everyone's trying to have fun, and the idea of Infiltration, making these these different picks, these different characters, surprise characters. I mean, he had been doing that in Korea, and I guess it wasn't until recently where he kind of got the courage to pull out a Hugo at the grand finals of a tournament.
Mm-hmm. We've been talking a lot about arcade culture here. We have Arcade UFO, and I think it was you that brought up a little funny anecdote about some of our top players.
Yeah, what's interesting to me is that those guys are coming out every week, the Punkos and the Infiltrations, because you definitely hear about if there's no money, if there's no stream, sometimes people will forego tournaments in America. You've had, a legendary story in Texas is we have none other than Shin Chang, Taiwanese fighting game player in Austin, who once said that when asked why he did not come to Austin's Ranbats, he asked, would Kobe Bryant play in the Special Olympics? So,
which broke my heart, to be honest.
So you have this idea. You have this idea, and obviously the guy's a big jokester, but you have this idea that is maybe not worth coming out to a smaller tournament. We talked about that with the open brackets versus the invitationals before. What is it that gets these guys to come every weekend? Is it just because everyone's friends? Is it a result of the tournament venue being so cool? Is it because they find it as good practice? What do you, as someone there, think it is that gets them to come back every single week?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. For example, when Arcade Stream started, there was a lot of weekly tournaments, and weeklies are kind of hard to keep up with it because it's every week, it's 4 times a month. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that that tripped people up. People want to meet each other. It's not a very, very big community. So I think one big adjustment that Drake Fan did was to make Arcade Stream monthly. So once a month is something that people can commit to regularly and decide to meet on. And so now that there's a once a month tournament, it's not uncommon to have. I think when Ray was here, there was the Laugh Punko Infiltration trio, there to body us, and it was a lot of people were there, and I think the monthly it also helps that I don't know if you noticed on our channel, the Korea Gaming channel, we're always promoting the arcade stream monthly. So just a few days ago we did one with Huda Man, who came from the States, and I think he's going to TGS. He's a very good Honda player, now playing DiCaprio.
Yeah, that's the video we have playing here in the background right now. This is Huda Man versus Laugh, I think. Which is awesome. I mean, like to have Laugh, Infiltration, Punko, Huda Man at your monthly local tournament, I think is so cool. I mean, that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword also, because it's very top heavy in terms of skill level. Of course, there's I mean there's a lot of strong players, but I mean when you have like world class level, it's kind of it's fun, definitely, but
you want to win once?
Chances of winning,
it's an interesting question. It's like it's kind of hard to get better if there's no one in between. So like, will the pool end up separating into like top players beating down casuals, or is someone climbing up to their level? How did these guys get there? It's an interesting question.
Speaking of the Korean fighting game scene, I remember a whole lot about, and we always go back and forth, is it Cafe or Cafe ID? But we talk a lot about how popular they were. I remember that EVO where all the King of Fighters players, I feel, are the ones that really came out in full force from the Cafe ID guys. What's going on with Cafe ID? Where did Cafe ID go, and did Arcade Stream take its place?
So as far as I know, so a little bit of backstory. Cafe ID was actually started by Drake Fang and Ken Sojang. They were partners, and they did it in Hongdae, which is like it's like a really hip area for Koreans, and I think they split up, and then the scene kind of got balkanized at a certain point. It was there's people were kind of spread out. There are all these places, and nobody really knew where to go. And then it kind of some people played at certain locations, and then Cafe ID got a lot of players. I think it was around 2013 playing there, and they had some momentum. But then I think eventually in 2015. I think things have gravitated towards Arcade Stream. I'm not sure exactly where Cafe ID is right now. I remember Huda Man tried to find it, and he couldn't this time around. Wow. But I do know that Ken Sojang is from what I heard, he's still interested in doing tournaments and running tournaments. But Cafe ID is like an arcade to go to. Like I haven't really heard much from them. Kong is still alive. It's still. They're kind of more focused on anime games, and they have like a bigger variety. And then Arcade Stream is kind of where you have the Street Fighter community generally, and you have a very good stream set up, and you may not believe this, but there's actually a Smash community forming at Arcade Stream. So
really, so is there a Korean? Is there a Korean Melee? There's a Korean Melee scene. What's that all about?
It's very small, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with Wolf. He's a StarCraft 2 commentator, and he's one of the leaders in the scene. He's kind of, I think they have a Facebook page where they kind of, everybody in Korea that likes Melee, let's meet up and play. And they've been doing it at each other's houses, and you need the CRT monitors or the tube televisions to play Melee, as every Melee player knows, and it's hard to kind of have a bunch of those and make those setups. So Drake Fang had a couple of tube TVs lying around and realized that there was a need, and so I think September 26th, if I'm not mistaken, they're going to try a Melee tournament at Arcade Stream, which is wow. So yeah, there's more Melee talk on this episode now.
And that's awesome to hear, because I remember the last time that our country really sort of appeared on the Super Smash Bros. Melee scene was Japan, and that brought us people like Asabadango in Smash 4, brought us, oh my god, I'm blanking on his name.
That's an interesting title.
Yoshi
Yamsa, yeah. Yamsa's Yoshi, and it's great to see other regions get into it, especially the Asian regions, because they seem to bring a very unique set of ideas to the table. And I think with a game like Melee, where people constantly joke about 20XX, how everybody's eventually going to play Fox, and they claim that it's running out of ideas, every time a new scene gets into it, and especially a scene like Korea, where they dedicate themselves to the craft and they figure out things that no one has ever seen before. That is super exciting to hear as a Smash fan.
Gerald, who are they playing at these Rambats?
Yeah, who's the best player in Korea? Do you know that?
Well, I don't know because I'm not a melee guy. As a matter of fact, when those guys came, I learned about like stuff like L canceling and wave dashing.
All right.
They were kind of showing me, and it's kind of funny because like they were showing like the Street Fighter players, like, all right, this is how you do this, this is how you do this, and I've never seen people more confused. And it's very technical melee, but I definitely love watching the game, and I just. I think it's going to take some time for me to get at any competent level.
Yeah, it has to be said that Melee has some of the most esoteric mechanics, not just of fighting games, but probably of any game. The fact you have to, the L canceling, the wave dashing, things like that.
What did I ask you today? What's a stitch something or other?
You asked me what a stitch face was.
Stitch face. Anyway, I mean, I feel like there is a bit of a language barrier, but I think it's cool that you're helping bring some of those communities together, and as we mentioned earlier, exporting that culture, because I love the interviews you guys have been putting out.
Thank you.
How have you felt about the responses? Now, and I have to ask you, did you get infiltration drunk before that interview? He's taking shots through the whole thing, I think.
Actually, that's mostly, if not all, Red Bull, I believe. But
okay.
I mean, I think we had a couple beers before that, but he had to go to First Attack the next day, so it's not like he was gonna be hungover for the flight. So. But he was gracious enough. It was just, these interviews just kind of have happened because Arcade Stream is so close to where I live and where my office is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Drake Fang's just like, hey, Infiltration's here. I'm like, oh, okay. Don't have anything for Friday. Maybe I'll just go get an interview, and just went over there with my equipment. With my partner Guy, and I didn't even know what questions to ask, but I just made something up in the taxi, and then. Just ask them, and it turned out really good. And the response has been, really, really great. Because, I mean, I'm kind of surprised because our channel is very young, and we haven't, it hasn't been, it's only been like a few months, but I think people have been curious as to what these players are thinking, what they're saying. And I think you can only get that by having this kind of format where, let them speak in their native tongue, and then have solid subtitles, and make an entertaining interview out of that.
One thing I'm interested in is we've seen Evo, we've seen all these American tournaments. We know of the fan base. At one of these monthlies, are there people coming up asking for autographs out of these players, or is it more of like an even level interaction? Is there a hierarchy in the scene in Korea, kind of like there is in America at this point, where there's the players and the fans, or is it really? It sounds to me a little bit more like of a gathering where everyone's just kind of friendly, given the whole trolling thing. So I'm interested to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think that's more accurate. It's definitely. I mean, a lot of people come, and I mean, it's so easy to meet top players, like the Korean top players in Korea, because you just go to Arcade Stream on a monthly or on a weekend, and it's really common. So like a lot of people will come, and they're just like, oh, hey, there's Infiltration, and hey, can I get a picture, or can I get an autograph? It's not like there isn't this big separation. If the scene were really, really big and there were like tons and tons of players where the place was just overflowing, maybe it would be like that. But there's definitely kind of an intimacy with having a smaller scene. And so, just the last tournament, after the tournament ended, an American player came up to Punko, just like, hey, you want to do a 1st to 5? I want to play your Seth. And he's like, okay, sure. And it's just like, everyone's really cool. They just want to play.
That's awesome. Gerald, I really want to thank you for coming on the show. We loved talking to you. You gave us a lot of cool insight. Keep doing what you're doing. Before we let you go, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to mention? Other than where we can find your stuff?
Well, I pretty much covered everything, but I guess I should drop this while I'm here. I am working on a documentary. It's going to be called Option Select, and
nice.
They going to be on the Korean Street Fighter scene, the fighting game scene too. And I've been shooting for many, many years now. I have a lot of old footage, and I'm still shooting, and it needs to come out. And it's just been work and money, and it's slow, but it'll eventually come out. And now that I've announced this, now I have something to push me forward.
Now you're on the hook, man. It's on the record, on the show that you're producing a documentary.
Yeah, you got to make the trailer now and let us show it, right?
Exactly, yeah. When you have a trailer, come back here and we can premiere it. And when you premiere the documentary, come back and we'll talk about it. But now, since you said Option Select, Core A Gaming, is that meant to be Korea Gaming?
Yeah, so it's kind of like a play on if you just type in the URL koreagaming.com, it is Korea with the C spelling. But then it's also core gaming as opposed to casual gaming. There's that reference. So I don't know. It wasn't my idea, but
I was about to compliment you on that top tier wordplay, man. But it was actually Ray who pointed out that look, it's the old version or the old spelling of Korea, and we're all like, wow. And then you mentioned Option Select, and I figured I had to bring it up.
Okay. Option Select was my idea, but that's not
Well, Gerald, thank you very much again. We appreciate you coming on the show and talking about it. Awesome, man. Keep up the good work.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, man. We got a lot of documentaries coming out. We have Hold Back to Block. Esteban is doing his documentary. I think it's called FGC, the documentary, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And it should be coming out later this month. And now we have this bright gentleman putting together a documentary. To me, that illustrates that the market is there. People want it. And it's evidenced by the views that he's getting on these interviews. Your thoughts on the growing ecosystem on the media and the culture around it?
Of like international fighting games, or I mean, as I pointed out in the interview, it's just amazing to get to hear these guys in their native tongue. It's amazing to get to hear them say what they want to say when they're not nervously being like prodded at by some guy after a tournament. Because whether or not you win or whether or not you lose, the way you talk after finishing a match is different than the way you talk when being interviewed by some guy out at, a bar or a coffee shop. It's just a different atmosphere, and it's a different feeling, and it's typically different questions being asked. And while it's very nice to have the field report and to see what these guys are saying, the idea of getting to see them talk on their home turf about a little more casual questions gives us more insight into them. It gets us closer to them, and it makes the tournament matches more interesting, which, as we mentioned, with Smash is a big deal. We know a little bit more about these players, and it's not all about the game, which ends up becoming what gets the fighting game scene into a moneymaker.
You just brought up something that I think is interesting. How popular is Mike Ross compared to how many tournaments he's won, right?
Yeah, totally.
When you put somebody out there and you feel like you get to know him via Excellent Adventures or what have you, you build that connection with the player, and you care that much more when they're up on the stage competing or on stream or what have you.
And when you even have the chance to play them, people like log onto their Xboxes when they think Excellent Adventures is going to be on so they can play against these guys. And people go to the Korea tournaments to play against, Infiltration and Punko. And I know at Arcade UFO when Mike Ross and Gutex came around for South by Southwest.
Out of nowhere.
I don't know how many Street Fighter players in Austin I'd never heard of showed up. So it's just people being somewhere, whether or not you get to play them or whether or not you get to hear them talk, makes it more entertaining for everyone.
For sure. That brings us to the end of round 2, our interview segment. We're going to round 3 with the remaining time because we're going to talk about Diddy Kong. Now, a lot of people here might not know this, but when Smash 4 came out, Michael Diddy Kong Danke was one of the best, if not the best, Diddy Kong in all of Texas. I said it.
I would not go that far whatsoever, but I would say that I played the character and he was really good. And if we're going to talk about Smash a little bit, he's still really good, but he's a lot different. He got nerfed for sure. His up air has less range. He has less kill power overall. But I think what that's done is it's caused people to learn to use his other tools better, and that's what you saw with C Viper and Street Fighter. It's what you see with Diddy Kong now. MVD, a player who's been doing well at a bunch of tournaments recently, but not really in the name. He's not the Nairo, he's not the Zero. Got 3rd place at this tournament, almost fourth right? place in this tournament.
Ian, why are you huffing
Third.
over there?
Third, because he lost in winners finals. He almost won in winners finals versus Nairo, using a lot of tactics that you didn't see as much when Diddy Kong was more obviously strong. You saw a lot of the usage of the up B barrel rocket, which is normally his recovery move, but it's a strong kill move, and it's extremely quick and maneuverable when it's been charged up. And what that kind of lets him do is while he's charging, he gauges the situation. He sees, where is this guy? Is he landing, in which case he's vulnerable? Is he still on the ground? And he decides whether to maneuver it away from him and stay safe or into him and kill him.
So it's like that barrel backpack, right? And it charges for a second, hovers you for a moment,
Right.
and then lets you choose where you're going?
Yeah, you get to kind of aim it left and right and up and down. Depending on how long you charge it, it'll go faster and further. And this was not a tech that people used. Diddy Kong was a character who grabbed you, did a combo, and killed you. And so people played very lame. And now that he's lost all of his kill moves, it's forced people to get a little more creative.
Ian has been wanting to chime in, I can tell, since we brought it up. Go ahead, buddy.
Well, the first thing I'll say before we go any further is that I'm really disappointed that you didn't play Donkey Kong, because then you could have been Donkey Kong.
Oh, there you go.
Okay,
Diddy Kong's got a gun.
It's still alliterative.
There you go. So,
I like him because he has a gun.
the peanut pop goat. The one thing I want to say about this matchup real quick before we get too far into the character specific stuff is that watching this and just at this point in the evolution of Smash 4, if you had replaced Zero Suit Samus with Sheik, I'm talking melee Sheik, and replaced Diddy Kong with, for example, Falco. We'll say Falco because he's a little bit slower than Fox. It's hard not to see this in the same light that you see a lot of melee action right now. If you watch the video on the screen, there's a lot of tech chasing. There's a lot of mix up. There's we've got some more strings in the air than existed in the tournament or in the game when the tournaments began. For sure, it's just a much faster and much more active game. And I think a lot of that, as you spoke to the Diddy Kong nerfs, has to do with the way that Diddy Kong plays now. It's far more about the neutral games instead of the hoo-ha into the up smash, which sent him off the top ledge. And especially with Zero Suit Samus having the speed to react to Diddy Kong, you just get this incredible interaction of neutral game here and the banana peel interplay. It's just gorgeous to watch, man. If you're not watching Smash 4, I think this right here is evidence that more people should be watching Smash 4.
I'm getting into Smash 4, man. When those reviews came in, that was the gateway drug for me.
Yeah.
That being said, I wasn't super really excited about the Ryu play that I saw, but Smash 4 is starting to get really interesting to me.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, the name of the game recently has been the less safe options, as we stated, because Zero Suit Samus, Nairo's known for grabbing a lot, and if you miss that grab, I mean, she reels back for an hour. You can do any attack you want. Diddy Kong throws the banana and then does a forward smash, hoping it'll combo, and that's the thing, is people are talking about how they're hoping it'll hit. It's random, but it's really not. In Smash, and I think what a lot of people don't realize at the top level is it's all a game of punishing really small things. If you land from an attack, you have to land. It's like Street Fighter and jumping. You have to land at a certain spot after you've used your second jump. That's an opportunity to punish with a long distance grab. That's an opportunity to punish right before they can land and shield with a banana. So when you see them doing these things, it's normally them reacting initially to something they're doing and punishing it rather than throwing the banana, seeing it hit and doing a forward smash. No.
As the non-Smash guy, I have questions for you guys about the banana. It makes sense for Diddy Kong to throw a banana peel because he's a monkey. It doesn't make as much sense for Birdie to throw a banana peel because he's in the middle of a street fight. But is that a projectile? How does it work in the game? Diddy Kong can just toss out a projectile?
Okay, so the way that it works in Super Smash Bros. Is for a long time people have had projectiles, but not in the sense that they've been known in Street Fighter. Street Fighter, the projectile tends to fly, and then it hits you, and you either block or you get hit by it.
Right.
Because of the emphasis on items in Super Smash Bros., it was a far more obvious choice for people to have items that you could throw that could then be used by other people. Link's boomerang being an obvious exception to the rule, same with Fox's lasers, Falco's lasers, things like that. But you've got Princess Peach and Diddy Kong and several other characters who have these projectiles that sort of can be thrown and sort of sit on the stage. And so it causes sort of this duality. I mean, good players we see several times this matchup. Nairo manages to actually catch the banana peel and use it against him. Right there, we just saw Nairo grab it off the ground, throw it up, and then MVD actually caught it again. So it becomes sort of another element of the play, and it's with Diddy Kong's ability to throw those out. We've also seen that it can be used to create a second of hit stun, which he can then use to combo into the forward smash and do a grab, something like that.
Yeah, it can even be used. You can actually put the banana behind them and then forward smash them, and they'll trip over the shield onto the banana. You saw Nairo throw him up and he caught it, and then that lost him the aerial options because, you have a banana in your hand, you can't use your aerial attacks. Any of them will throw a banana.
I can't help.
So it's just this
keep a straight face.
Banana. It's like banana.
Yeah.
And it's the options
banana.
are just out of control. The game is getting way faster, and I think anyone who was ready to kind of throw this game away to being super lame, sit in your shield, wasn't really taking into account what could be utilized.
Is this a result of some of the patch changes that were made to the game?
Definitely,
It's evening out and kind of like taking flight to a degree?
And I mean, yes, Zero wasn't here. He's the best Sheik player. He's the best Diddy Kong player. If Zero was there, he probably would have won with Sheik, and it would have been another round of complaints. So there's that. But I mean, there's plenty of other good Sheik players, and Zero Suit Samus still won. And there's that's not a character that's doing particularly well outside of Nairo. So there's other things in the game there, and you have to chalk it up to maybe we'll catch up to Zero, and if we don't, it might just be that he's a better player. It's not solely the game that's at fault.
Quick note about the actual character breakdown at Paragon. Between them, I took a quick note on this. Let me grab it real fast. Between the top 8 players, 10 different characters were played.
Wow.
Between their mains and their alts, just all the picks total, there were 10 different characters in the top 8.
We saw Ryu in top 8.
We saw Ryu in top 8, and Mr. R actually made Ryu look gorgeous. The way he was using,
focus attacks?
Fair to the Shoryuken, he was using the focus attack as sort of a parry. We saw him use that in midair, even though we knew he wasn't going to hit. Stopped him from getting the hit. Keeps him from having to DI something, or even just save his life when he's working on dying. It speaks to a couple things. You were asking about whether or not this speaks to the patch changes. It's two things. One, it's the patch changes. Obviously, Diddy Kong has had to change his game, and even Zero's had to change his game with Diddy Kong since the patches to Hoo-Ha. But it also speaks to the way that this is developing. I mean, we see tighter combos, we see better reads, we see more tight mechanical play. People are sort of much like Melee, doing their best to sort of figure out just how far we can push this game. And every competition, we're seeing a little bit more. They get a little bit further down that road.
I have a question about Ryu, but because, fighting games. But before we move on, you were telling me something interesting about this stage that we're seeing back here. The idea that you would pick it because you think your opponent is better than you?
I mean, I can't say that's exactly what MVD was doing, but I think at most local tournaments and most things people know is that Lilac Cruise, I think that's what this is called.
Something like that, Lilac.
Is one of the more volatile stages in the game. Basically, the stage moves back and forth, and they fixed it slightly in patches, but depending on where you're standing, sometimes you'll go airborne for like a frame or two, and it'll cancel
Just for standing there.
Just for standing there, because the stage moves. And you'll go airborne for a frame or two, moves will get canceled, things that are very hard to account for will happen. And thus, if there's a skill gap, oftentimes it'll bridge that. Now, to be fair, I don't know exactly the Diddy Kong Zero Suit Samus matchup. I don't know if this is the optimal stage choice or not. But a lot of times it's considered, I know the commentators were talking about it, if you pick Lilac Cruise, that's because you think you need it to win,
That makes sense. So about Ryu, the question I had was, when that character was announced, it was somewhat breaking the mold in that you can do inputs that are akin to what you would do in a Street Fighter game, the quarter circles and all that. Are people using those, or are they doing down, forward?
They're stronger.
But are people using them in... Exactly. So they have the buff on them. If you do them with the extended motion... Are people using them in tournament, or are they just sticking to the way Smash is played?
I don't have an answer to that.
I can tell you that it definitely depends on the situation. So with Ryu's Shoryuken, he has the up B version, which is a little less strong, and he has the Shoryuken traditional motion version, which kills very early. Mm-hmm. In a combo scenario, there's almost no reason not to use the strong Shoryuken. Ryu's down air, lifts them into the ground a little. It's untechable if done on the ground. And then you get a Shoryuken combo off of it. Definitely use that. However, out of shield, you can't jump cancel in this game as you can in Melee. What you can do is you can do up moves out of shield. Mm-hmm. So you can't do a Shoryuken out of shield, but you can do an up B out of shield. This is one of the fastest, most invincible options, along with Zero Suit Samus's up B. So when the easier motion is necessary due to the mechanics of the game, that's what people do. Otherwise, they're going to try to get the extra damage. I mean, at a pro level, it's kind of needed to eke that out. So yeah, I don't think people are settling unless they have to due to the mechanics of the game.
And I think it's worth mentioning that at this point, people are sort of just figuring out Ryu. I mean,
right, totally.
For goodness sake, Mr. R, busted out Ryu, and that was a gigantic deal because for the first time since he launched,
always a Sheik player,
always a Sheik player. Yeah, and suddenly he's in the top 8, and that's obviously a huge deal. So once again, I think it speaks to the fact that in a very big way, the Smash 4 players are still figuring out what the game is capable of. And I think the great thing about Paragon is it showed that there is more depth than we've already seen. And perhaps Zero's absence is what helped bring that out.
Yeah, I mean, there was people actually mentioned that. Like, is it a good thing he was there? I think that's unfair, obviously.
Yeah.
You can't say that Nairo wouldn't have won if he was there. You can't say that interesting stuff wouldn't have happened if he wasn't there. But it definitely let you see the finals be something different. It let you see the winners' finals be something different. And whether for good or for bad, and we know Zero could win with other characters, he plays Diddy Kong and he plays Sheik. So it's cool to see something else.
It is, and and once again, it's never really fair to say, yeah, this guy was gone. Like, yeah, no, like, in what kind of jerk, if I may swear on stream, would say yes, it's so good that Zero wasn't there because we didn't get to see the best player in the game compete. At a certain point, I think that as this game moves on, maybe in 3 months, maybe in 6 months, maybe next tournament, you'll start to see people sort of challenge the established pantheon of characters even more with new tech that we haven't seen before. It's just a really exciting time for Super Smash Bros. For Wii U right now.
And one thing, I want to bring up about that is we've seen Street Fighter turn into this counterpick fest, infiltrations, playing a different character every tournament. In Smash, you can counterpick stages and you can switch characters after you win. The counterpicking game is like way bigger than it ever could possibly be in Street Fighter. So who knows? I mean, you saw the Ryu, after going down 2-0 with Sheik, switched to Ryu. You saw Zero play 2 different characters at EVO. And that was obviously a very serious moment. He wouldn't have done that if he didn't think it was going to make him win. Like, this game, with the potential of balance it has with 6WX played Sonic and Ryu, I mean, we can see this turn into like this huge metagame of different stages and different characters, and I don't even really think that's been explored almost at all yet.
Guys, that brings us to the end of round 3 where we discuss and analyze things, but I would like to continue the general Smash conversation going, and I'd like you guys to tell me one thing. As a guy that's new to the Smash scene, of course I'm familiar with the games, and I've seen the tournaments, and I understand the hype, and I've seen the Smash documentary. My question has always been, this is from the outside looking in, the competition between, if there's even, Melee and Smash 4. Is one game going to eventually take over the other one? There's this question of whether new players are coming into Melee or not. Is the skill gap so much that it's not worth it? I mean, we just had Gerald talking about the Korean players starting to play Melee. Your thoughts on that between you two while I take a brief break to go use the restroom.
I guess I'll start off by saying, I mean, it's interesting because the games, despite both being Smash and having similar qualities at a base level, are totally different. Melee is, I don't think anyone's going to deny, more technical. It's older. It's more solidified. And it's still, at this point, the more popular game. You don't have that much mixture between the scenes. I know Hungrybox enters Smash 4 in doubles sometimes, and Mewtwo King obviously enters both, like, sometimes even. And
I believe he also enters Project M.
And he also enters Project M.
So he's sort of well known for doing everything available.
Exactly. So, I mean, they're not merged, but they're at the same tournaments. Paragon has both. Big House has both. Every Smash tournament of note is going to have both. EVO took both. So whether or not both sides like it, they have to coexist. And I know there's been the whole stream time argument. There's been whether or not, Smash 4 should come first or come second because it's a newer game. And it's been a big sense of content in the Smash community. They can get along, and both games are good. I mean,
yeah, I think that the last point that you made. Sorry if I cut you off. I think the last point that you made is really important. Is people compare the two, but I mean, what we're seeing here are two very different things, aren't they?
Yeah, totally. I mean, you have Melee, you have Smash 4. One came out how many years afterwards? Like 12 years after Melee?
Smash 4 came out last year, I believe. So it was in 2015. And I believe Super Smash Bros. Melee came out in either 1999 or 2000. So what is it, 15 years?
Yeah, I mean, I played that game as a kid, and now I have a job when Smash 4 comes out. So it's just a totally different climate. And sometimes it's weird because, in sports, you don't have that. You don't have in the same basketball tournament, there's a football tournament. It's not like that. And Smash is a little more connected than that in that they're both made by the same company. They're both have the same title until the end, but they don't have to necessarily compete for anything other than the stream time. And really, people who like Smash 4 are going to watch it, whether it's first or second, and the same for Melee. And I think it should be an opportunity that's liked by both teams rather than argued about.
And to build on what you're saying here, I think one thing that needs to be brought up is the idea of competition. You said that they're competing perhaps for stream time. I think there was a larger discussion, especially when Super Smash Bros. Melee and Project M sort of coexisted when Project M was at its peak, is people didn't look at it as, multiple pools of players playing the same games. It was which was better, because the community was so concentrated that it was a question of where will these top players play. And so I think the idea that we've got this zero-sum game, this existence where Melee players are either going to play one game or the other, is sort of being rooted out by the fact that Smash 4 is quickly developing its own player base, its own names, its own storylines. And so while I think there once was a competition saying that, the player base isn't big enough, because Melee was such an old game and it was so hard to get into with the GameCube, you couldn't play online, things like that the player base maybe wasn't growing quick enough to sustain another game. At this point, it's less of a zero-sum game than people thought it was. So the competition, I feel, maybe in a year, maybe a year and a half, doesn't exist. It's not Project M. It's Super Smash Bros. For Wii U, and then it's Super Smash Bros. Melee. And much like American football and soccer, they're two different games with two different player bases that people appreciate for separate reasons.
Totally, I totally agree with that. And while this is typically, a show for Street Fighter and for other fighting games of the more traditional sense, I mean, we're talking about Smash today. And one thing I'd like to bring up for the viewer base that doesn't know about it as much about it is we have Project M. That's obviously a hack or a ROM modification of the game Brawl, which was not nearly as popular in Melee or Smash for Wii U, to make it a little bit more like Melee. Can you explain a little why Project M has kind of lost some spotlight for the people who don't know?
I think the most obvious answer has to be the fact that, simply put, Nintendo put the kibosh on it. I mean, there's no question that Project M, especially being, as you so eloquently put it, a hack, for lack of a better term, it exists in an extremely, maybe not so gray legal area. I mean, on the very basis of it, there's some very hardworking people who made an incredible game using someone else's intellectual property. And frankly, using software developed by another company that they maybe have patents on, and there are other issues to address. And I think the problem with Project M, the reason that it didn't grow is not only were people concerned about whether or not the copyright police would come looking for them, which they most certainly would if the game had reached the same level that Melee is at today, but there was also that question of which is better. People compared Project M to Melee. Project M was essentially trying to introduce Brawl characters using Melee mechanics developed by an independent team. And so then, of course, if you're trying to emulate Melee, that simply welcomes the comparison Melee to Project M.
Somebody in the chat,
yes.
By the way, I'm back. Somebody in the chat says it's a mod, not a hack.
That's
but
not, yeah.
the
Sorry.
Wii had that, was it like the homebrew, kind of like the back end door where you could like modify games.
It's really easy on the Wii. All you need is an SD card. Yeah.
The thing is, again, I didn't play Project M or Brawl, but I do remember seeing these badass alternate costumes that they were coming out with for these characters, and I'm like, hey, Nintendo, people want these. Does the current Wii U Smash have alternate skins for their characters?
Only a couple characters have like built into the game. Like
Built
Wario has like his WarioWare costume and his original costume, but no.
And I mean, they've always had like the alternate colors, but never, I don't think ever on the level that Project M had its alternate costumes.
I'm surprised Project M hasn't been completely shut down and like cease and desist left and right and like legal action taken against them, because you're right, as you said, somebody else's game.
It's harder to find now. I mean, honestly, because like I know that the biggest Smash like VOD source is VG Bootcamp, ran by Gimmer over in I think Maryland, and I think they were basically forced to take down their Project M videos. So I mean, with where it's being hosted, with the little stream time it gets, I just don't think it's a big enough bug to squash anymore.
2 notes. This beautiful footage that you're seeing behind us was brought to you by VG Bootcamp. Gimmer himself gives permission to use it. Second, here at the Capitol Factory in Austin, Texas, there's some dudes that play Project M on the weekly outside.
It's really It's really popular at obviously we're right near the University of Texas at Austin. Mm-hmm. The game has a thriving scene. It's not like it's dead. It's just that it's kind of undercover.
But as far as the competitive scene, I would like to see Smash 4 go forward as as the one that takes the reins, takes the
You
throne?
want you see now
Ooh.
you're kind of talking about
Ooh.
against what Ian and I were saying,
You're
which
on
is that
thin
they're
ice,
totally
mister.
different games.
But you're right. I missed it. Did we agree that they can both be sustained?
We
Yes.
agree that they should try.
Try.
I think they can.
I sort of implied that in about a year and a half they'll have completely distinct communities and completely distinct player bases.
I mean, and that makes sense, but you don't see people like a massive competitive team still playing Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Or, I mean, Third Strike even, or even Super Turbo versus Street Fighter 4.
So in Japan, you actually do still see your Super Turbo team, and Melee is definitely a special case where you had, kind of this bomb come out after. Like, there are people who like Brawl. I'm not going to totally hate on it as a game, but it definitely just wasn't as popular. And a lot of your Smash 4 players, your best ones, Nairo, Zero, are Brawl holdovers that learned the game that was definitely a little closer than it was to Melee.
And Zero actually was well known for being virtually untouchable in Project M. That was sort of where he went after people sort of settled on the idea that Brawl was maybe a little bit too, because of like the tripping mechanic and the slowness in the defensive play, maybe not exactly ready for prime time.
A couple of points for you guys. One is this. You saw that Nintendo got Pokken Tournament, the rights to Pokken Tournament.
Yes.
Okay? So next year they're going to have a $1 million tournament for Splatoon. They're going to have Pokken Tournament. You're going to tell me they're not going to start showing more love to Smash 4 versus Melee? I think Nintendo has a vested interest, of course, in seeing Smash 4 grow and not necessarily Melee.
Of course, because, I mean, they're not selling new copies of Melee anymore. So,
Right.
yeah, I mean, the question is whether or not Nintendo will ever enter the fray the same way that Riot does for League of Legends and the same way that Valve does for Dota. And if that does happen, that could kind of be, the nail in the hammer for Melee. But I think the grassroots scene has grown to the point where they can sustain themselves necessarily without that hand, unless it literally comes down to crush them. But I think if that was going to happen, it would have happened by now. I think they can sell copies of Smash 4 while Melee is still popular. But there is definitely a part of the scene that beelines to Melee because it's the good game. So... yeah. Do they lose people from Smash 4 for that? I'm not sure, honestly.
And let's not pretend that Nintendo hasn't exactly been super helpful to Super Smash Bros. Melee. They've sort of let it exist. They want to push new IP. They want to put out new properties. So I'm not gonna say that Nintendo doesn't obviously have some ulterior motive in mind, that they're trying to make money, which most corporations are. But it has to be said that perhaps what they see there, at least to a certain degree, is that Super Smash Bros. Melee has a sort of self-sustaining momentum. It's definitely got a community. It's got quite a bit of staying power. Obviously, almost 15 years. By the way, it was released in 2001. Almost 15 years after its release. Whereas Super Smash Bros. For Wii U still needs a bit of a boost. It's still sort of a baby bird. You're still feeding it worms until it can finally fly out of the nest on its own. Once again, doesn't change the fact that Nintendo obviously is not working hard on Melee's behalf. But
let me point something else out to you. We're
Please.
talking about Smash 4 potentially if Nintendo does this, blah, 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 blah. Well, DreamHack, one of the most popular and storied esports franchises out there, DreamHack Winter, they announced that this year they're going to have, and it was Jacob Wolf, our very own Jacob Wolf, a reporter for Daily Dot, that broke the story that DreamHack Winter would have Melee tournament. And they've just released their schedule. Melee schedule for DreamHack Winter 15. Thursday, Melee doubles. This is November 26th through 28th. Friday, Melee singles. Saturday, Melee singles finals. So again, it's being sponsored. I mean, it's going to be featured at a very important tournament.
I want to talk about doubles a little bit because I know there was a bit of a Twitter issue with the fact that doubles for, I think, Melee and Smash 4 was canceled at Paragon.
Why was it canceled? Give me the deets.
It was canceled because there wasn't enough time. But then the question becomes, what do you mean there isn't enough time? That was an event for the game. Mm-hmm. You can't you don't cancel, the diving because the swimming took too long. Diving's an event too, Is doubles less of a priority? Does it get less viewers? I mean, yeah, of course it is. But for some people, that's what they come for. I know you have teams that literally, Armada has always been a very, adamant proponent of the fact that doubles is an event. He's gotten doubles tournaments that were canceled to come back on. This is a really big deal for people. And the fact that it didn't happen lost people money that they thought they may have made. They made flights out to come. I know Mewtwo King made a tweet that he thinks he lost $1,000 because they canceled the doubles events. Because to be fair, he typically does win a lot of them, or at least plays top 3. Wow. So it's can you do that?
Well,
is that legal? Like, I don't know.
A big part of the problem, and this goes to an age-old argument in the world of fighting games as well as Super Smash Bros., is the very simple fact that they use tablets to track their brackets instead of using paper brackets. And if I'm not mistaken, there was an issue with the tablets, and that's what led to it. But speaking to the presence of doubles in this world of Super Smash Bros., it occupies sort of a weird space because you see guys like Hungrybox and Plup competing in doubles, and it's sort of a fun thing that they do on the side. I don't know that they do a lot of doubles practice. For example, Hungrybox obviously probably focused on breaking into the top 5 in Melee. So it occupies this sort of weird space where it's taken seriously, but it's also sort of a fun event. I mean, it's held before even Smash for Wii U singles. So, what is doubles existence in the world of Super Smash Brothers? If some people take it seriously, some people don't take it seriously. It's hard to.
What I find interesting is we had Snake Eyes on the other day, and he was saying I used to play Halo on a team. Or I used to play these team esports, and I didn't like having to rely on other people, so I started playing fighting games so that I could just be me that I have to worry about. The only time we've seen teams really in your traditional fighting games, the non-Smash games, was Street Fighter Cross Tekken that 1 year at EVO. And that was the last time you saw it.
Right.
Is there room? My question is that if you can phrase it a little different, is there more room in the fighting game community to have more of these team things? And other than doubles, I'm not sure what fills that.
I mean, one of the big arguments made by the Smash community for doubles and the people that like it is that it's a unique opportunity. Fighting games really don't have it. They've tried it with scramble mode. You can't throw 2 fighting game characters on the screen and let it be used. And a tag mode is just a glorified way for 2 people to play as one person. It's not 2 people playing at the same time. So Smash has an opportunity for 2 people to play at the same time in a way that is unique and viable.
Mm-hmm. And let's not pretend that one of the unique advantages of Smash isn't its extreme vertical element.
Yes,
I mean,
totally.
Simply put, because they generally have.
What do you mean by that?
On.
You mean literally being able to move up and down on the stage?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, because they generally have friendly fire on, and if you did 2 players on the screen at the same time. 4 characters of the same player at the same time in Street Fighter, they'd be punching each other in the back of the head, which, while hilarious, isn't exactly.
The characters are a lot smaller as compared to the stages, unless you're going to talk about like Arcana Heart or something like that. But compared to Street Fighter, the character's a lot smaller compared to the stages. And, it's been a side event. It's been relegated to that for a long time. And for a long time, you saw the doubles champions were just singles players pairing up, the 2 best guys in the tournament. But now you're seeing you have Pew Pew U and SFAT, who are both high-tier Smash players, but not top-tier Smash players. However, they win doubles tournaments because they have the chemistry to do so. Armada teams with his brother, who never places top 8 in tournaments, essentially. I mean, I could be wrong. Don't crucify me if I'm wrong. But typically does not say it's top 8 in tournaments, and they win the tournament, and he plays amazingly well. So the metagame is evolving to the point where it's its own game. Mm-hmm. There could be a point where the singles players practice for singles and the doubles players practice for doubles. But the real thing that matters isn't whether the players want it. I guess in the end, it's do the spectators care? And that's an answer I don't really know, and I'd kind of like to hear, how much do spectators care about watching doubles?
Apparently not enough that they were able to cancel it, and there was a little bit of hoopla about it, but I mean we're still talking about it today.
Indeed.
The singles results, that is.
Yeah, no, I think it just has to be said that fans want to see. We speak often about how in Super Smash Brothers, as well as Street Fighter, places like that, personalities matter quite a bit. So if you can cram, it almost comes down to simple arithmetic. If you can put more of your favorite players on the stage at the same time, that's sort of a winning formula. So it simply has to be said that Super Smash Brothers as a whole ecosystem of games is reaching a new level of saturation that it's not seen before. And so if Melee doubles is filling up, that's obviously a good scene for the whole competitive ecosystem as a whole, because it shows that people are getting in and they're interested in the action that's going on.
And it's one of the craziest things for spectators to watch, because someone just mentioned in the chat, there was the Wombo combo. That's one of the most famous videos of any fighting game, period. And that was a teams match where 2 players ganged up on one to do a combo. And that's something that's totally unique. It's a lot of people involved. It's not just 2. It's so spacing and timing and character specific that the fact that it happened is just absolutely amazing. It's unique. And it's something that's truly specific to a situation, which are always the most amazing things. If you think of in Street Fighter 3, you had Evo Moment 37, where only because Chun-Li did a super at this time and he guest parried it beforehand did you get that amazing moment. It's not the interactions where something happens over and over and over again and they make the right read over and over and over again that people are interested to watch. It's the crazy shit, and Doubles has a lot of that.
That's my favorite thing about fighting games is watching everybody seeing it at the same time. It's on the screen. We're all experiencing it at the same time, and there's that shared, holy shit, did you just see that?
Yeah, and that's literally what Smash Doubles is that's the entire time. The other complaint it gets, though, is that it's unorganized and people aren't as good at it, and it's less, one-on-one skillful.
Is it scrub-friendly?
No, but it's not singles, and it's not what people care about yet, so who knows? I think as a spectator sport, for people who aren't watching Smash yet, for people who are watching for the first time, if we ever make it onto the big screen TV consistently, and it's on ESPN, and people are watching, and they haven't seen Smash before, I think they would like Doubles. And I don't know if that's something that we should pay attention to for the future because we want more viewers. I don't know if it's something that's more important for the players to decide because they like the game. It's the tug of the grassroots versus the esports in general is like, does double, like, I don't know. I mean, I'm just talking a lot about Smash Doubles.
Guys, that brings us to the end of Best of 3. That was 3 rounds plus a bonus round. We had a double elimination or something. I don't know how that ended up. But we wanted to take the opportunity to talk more about Smash, especially because it was a big weekend. It's a growing thing. My interest in it is growing, and I'm the host of the show, so that's how we talked about it more. Once again, you've been watching Best of 3. I'm Efren Salinas. This is Mike, Diddy Kong, not Donkey Kong, Donka Schiller, and our compadre filling in for Ray Chan, Ian, Double John Barker.
We promise we'll be back.
He will be back. He had an unfortunate ear infection. That's too much information.
I think that's yeah.
Best of 3. Thanks for watching, guys.